In a small suburban town where everyone knew each other by name, life moved at a steady rhythm. The streets were lined with neatly trimmed lawns, and the air carried the faint scent of autumn leaves. It was an ordinary day for most residents, but for 12-year-old Marcus Johnson, it would turn out to be anything but normal. Marcus was just like any other boy his age, full of energy, curious about the world, and eager to make his mark. He loved riding his bike after school, feeling the wind rush past his face as he navigated the familiar roads leading back home. That crisp October afternoon, Marcus decided to take a shortcut through the local park. It wasn't something new. He often chose this route to avoid waiting at traffic lights. As he pedaled along, enjoying the golden hues of the falling leaves, he noticed a woman walking her dog nearby. She seemed unremarkable at first glance, wearing oversized sunglasses and clutching her phone tightly, as though expecting an important call. But what Marcus didn't realize was that this woman, whose name was Patricia, was watching him closely, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Patricia had lived in the neighborhood for years and prided herself on keeping it safe and orderly. To her, safety meant maintaining a certain image, one that she believed excluded people who looked different from her. When she spotted Marcus, her mind immediately began spinning stories. His presence in the park felt wrong to her, not because he was doing anything unusual, but simply because of the color of his skin. Without giving it a second thought, Patricia pulled out her phone and dialed 911. Her voice trembled slightly as she reported seeing a suspicious individual loitering around the area. She described Marcus vaguely, focusing only on his race, while conveniently leaving out details like his age or the fact that he was clearly just a child heading home. Meanwhile, Marcus remained completely unaware of the drama unfolding behind him. Oblivious to Patricia's actions, he continued humming a tune under his breath, thinking about the science project he needed to finish for school. As he turned onto his street, he slowed down to admire the colorful decorations some neighbors had put up for Halloween. Little did he know that within minutes 2 police cars would pull up near his house, their flashing lights casting eerie shadows on the pavement. When the officers stepped out of their vehicles, they approached Marcus cautiously. At first he was confused. Why were the police here? Had something happened? Trying to stay calm, he answered their questions politely, explaining that he lived right there and showing them his school ID card. One officer asked if he was related to Mayor Angela Thompson, recognizing her last name. Marcus nodded proudly, confirming that Angela was indeed his mother. This revelation caught the officers off guard. They exchanged glances, realizing that this situation might be more complicated than it appeared. Back at City Hall, Angela Thompson was wrapping up a meeting when she received a call from one of her staff members. The news hit her like a tonnage truck. Someone had called the police on her son simply because he was black. Shock quickly turned into anger, but Angela forced herself to remain composed. Known for her poise and determination, she contacted the police department immediately to get the full story. She also requested security camera footage from the park to verify what had happened. What started as a quiet evening soon spiraled into chaos as word of the incident spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with reactions once the story broke. People couldn't believe that someone would call the police on a child, let alone the mayor's son. Memes mocking Patricia's ignorance flooded timelines, and hashtags like Justice for Marcus trended nationwide. Reporters swarmed Angela's office, eager to hear her side of the story. During interviews, Angela spoke with grace and authority, using the moment to shed light on the systemic racism faced by countless black families every single day. She emphasized that Marcus's experience was not unique. It was part of a much larger pattern of racial profiling and discrimination. For Marcus, the entire ordeal was overwhelming. Friends texted him constantly, offering support and sharing memes that made him laugh despite everything. Teachers checked in on him at school, making sure he was okay emotionally. While he wished none of this had happened, he found comfort in knowing that his story had sparked important conversations. Neighbors who rarely interacted before now came together to discuss issues of bias and inclusion. Community leaders organized meetings to address these challenges head-on, vowing to create a safer environment for everyone. As for Patricia, the backlash was swift and brutal. Once identified, she became a pariah in the community. Friends distanced themselves, embarrassed by her actions, and her employer placed her on leave pending an investigation. Though some defended her right to feel unsafe, the majority agreed that involving law enforcement over baseless assumptions was unacceptable. Public shaming isn't justice, however, and Angela reminded everyone during interviews that real change required deeper reflection and reform, rather than mere condemnation of individuals. The months following the incident brought significant changes to the town. Schools introduced programs focused on teaching empathy and respect for diversity. Local businesses pledged support for initiatives promoting equality, inspired by Angela's leadership. Even city policies underwent revisions to ensure fair treatment for marginalized groups. For Marcus, the experience left a lasting impact. While he wished none of it had happened, he took pride in knowing that his story had ignited meaningful progress. He joined youth advocacy groups, determined to use his voice to make a difference. Angela continued championing causes close to her heart, working tirelessly to implement policies addressing inequality. She channeled the anger and frustration surrounding her family's ordeal into positive action, proving that resilience could transform adversity into opportunity. And though the memory of that autumn afternoon lingered, it also served as a reminder of how far the community had come, and how much further it still needed to go. Through it all, Marcus learned valuable lessons about courage, strength, and standing up for what is right. He realized that even in moments of darkness, light can shine through if people come together with purpose and determination. The story wasn't just about a racist woman or a courageous mayor. It was about a community, awakening to its flaws and striving to do better. In the end, it showed that hope and unity could emerge from even the most challenging circumstances. As the police officers stood in front of Marcus, their expressions shifted between confusion and concern. They had been dispatched to investigate a report of a suspicious individual, but what they found was a polite 12-year-old boy calmly explaining that he lived in the house right behind them. The contrast between the call they received and the reality before them was glaring. One officer knelt down to Marcus's level, trying to make him feel more at ease. "Hey, buddy, we just need to make sure everything's okay here," he said gently. Marcus nodded, still unsure why all this attention was on him. Meanwhile, back at City Hall, Angela Thompson was wrapping up a long day of meetings. As the first African-American mayor of her city, she was no stranger to challenges. Her journey to the top had been filled with obstacles, but she had always faced them head-on with grace and determination. That evening, however, she wasn't prepared for the phone call she would receive. A member of her staff informed her about the incident involving Marcus. At first, Angela thought it was a misunderstanding, a simple mix-up that could be resolved quickly, but as more details emerged, her heart sank. Someone had called the police on her son simply because he was black. Angela immediately sprang into action. She contacted the police department to ensure the situation was properly documented and requested access to any available security footage from the park and surrounding areas. Her voice was calm but firm as she spoke with officials, demanding transparency and accountability. "This isn't just about my son," she told them. "It's about every child who has ever been targeted unfairly because of the color of their skin." Her words carried weight, not only because of her position but also because of the passion behind them. By the time Angela arrived home, news of the incident had already begun spreading through the community. Neighbors gathered outside, some offering support, while others whispered among themselves. Marcus sat on the porch steps, visibly shaken but trying to stay strong. When Angela pulled into the driveway, she rushed to embrace him tightly. "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart," she assured him, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "We'll get through this together." The next morning, the story exploded across social media. Local news outlets picked it up, and soon, it went viral nationwide. People were outraged by Patricia's actions, flooding comment sections with messages of solidarity for Marcus and his family. Memes mocking Patricia's ignorance began circulating online, turning her into a symbol of everything wrong with racial profiling. One popular meme showed a picture of a young boy riding a bike with the caption, "When you're just trying to get home from school, but someone thinks your existence is suspicious." For Marcus, the sudden spotlight was overwhelming. Friends texted nonstop, teachers checked in at school, and even strangers approached him to express their support. While part of him appreciated the kindness, another part wished he could go back to being just an ordinary kid. He tried to focus on his routine, homework, basketball practice, and spending time with his dog, but it was hard to ignore the constant buzz around him. His mother encouraged him to take things one day at a time, reminding him that his experience had sparked important conversations that needed to happen. Patricia, on the other hand, found herself drowning in consequences. Once identified as the caller, she became a target of widespread criticism. Neighbors who once greeted her warmly now avoided eye contact. Some even posted signs on their lawns declaring their homes safe spaces in direct defiance of her actions. Her employer placed her on administrative leave, citing concerns about how her behavior might reflect on the company. Though a few people defended her, claiming she had every right to feel unsafe, the majority agreed that calling the police on a child based solely on his race was unacceptable. Despite the backlash, Angela refused to let anger consume her. Instead, she used the moment to highlight systemic issues of racism and inequality. During interviews with reporters, she spoke eloquently about the countless Black families who face similar situations daily. What happened to Marcus isn't unique, she emphasized. It's a reflection of a much larger problem that we as a society must address. Her words resonated deeply, inspiring many to reflect on their own biases and privileges. Community leaders wasted no time organizing town hall meetings to discuss implicit bias and ways to foster inclusivity within neighborhoods. Schools introduced programs aimed at teaching children about empathy and respect for diversity. Even local businesses pledged support for initiatives promoting equality, inspired by Angela's leadership during such a charged moment. For Marcus, seeing his story spark tangible change brought a sense of purpose. He joined youth advocacy groups determined to use his voice to make a difference. As weeks turned into months, life slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such a public ordeal. Angela continued championing causes close to her heart, working tirelessly to implement policies ensuring fair treatment for marginalized groups. She channeled the anger and frustration surrounding her family's experience into positive change, proving that resilience could transform adversity into opportunity. Marcus, now older and wiser, took pride in knowing that his story had ignited meaningful progress. Though Patricia faded into obscurity, her misguided actions served as a catalyst for awakening. In the end, the story wasn't just about a racist woman or a courageous mayor. It was about a community coming together to demand better. It was about recognizing flaws and striving to do better. And most importantly, it was about finding hope and unity in the face of adversity. For Marcus and Angela, the experience left scars but also taught valuable lessons about courage, strength, and standing up for what is right. Through it all, they remained committed to creating a world where no child would ever have to endure what Marcus did that autumn afternoon. The days following the incident were a whirlwind for Marcus and his family. Angela, determined to turn this painful experience into an opportunity for change, began working tirelessly to address the systemic issues that allowed such incidents to happen in the first place. She held press conferences, attended community meetings, and collaborated with local leaders to draft policies aimed at combating racial profiling. Her calm yet resolute demeanor inspired many, but it also masked the emotional toll the situation was taking on her personally. Late at night, after Marcus had gone to bed, Angela would sit alone in her study, scrolling through social media comments or reading letters from families who shared similar stories of discrimination. Each message reinforced her resolve to fight harder. For Marcus, life became a balancing act between normalcy and newfound visibility. At school, he tried to focus on his studies and extracurricular activities, but whispers followed him wherever he went. Some classmates admired him for standing strong despite what happened, while others seemed uncomfortable, unsure how to treat him now that he was famous. Teachers kept a close eye on him, offering extra support when needed, but Marcus sometimes felt suffocated by all the attention. He missed the simplicity of being just another kid, a boy who loved riding his bike and playing video games without worrying about making headlines. One afternoon, as Marcus walked home from basketball practice, he noticed a group of kids gathered near the park where the incident had occurred. They were hanging posters on lampposts and trees, each one bearing messages like Black Lives Matter and End Racial Profiling. Curious, Marcus approached them and struck up a conversation. The group turned out to be part of a youth advocacy organization focused on raising awareness about social justice issues. When they learned who Marcus was, they invited him to join their efforts. Initially hesitant, Marcus eventually agreed, realizing that his story could help amplify their cause. For the first time since the incident, he felt a glimmer of hope that maybe something good could come out of all the pain. Back in the neighborhood, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Patricia's name had become synonymous with prejudice, and many residents distanced themselves from her entirely. Some even organized protests outside her house, holding signs that read, "Our neighborhood stands against racism." While most agreed that public shaming wasn't productive, the anger was palpable. Neighbors whispered among themselves, questioning how someone so deeply rooted in bias could have lived among them for so long without anyone noticing. Others took the opportunity to reflect on their own actions, wondering if they too had ever contributed, intentionally or unintentionally, to perpetuating harmful stereotypes. Patricia, meanwhile, retreated further into isolation. Losing her job and facing widespread condemnation left her feeling cornered and defensive. In private conversations with friends, or what remained of them, she insisted that she hadn't meant any harm. "I just wanted to feel safe," she repeated, though fewer people were willing to listen. Public apologies felt hollow, and attempts to explain herself only fueled more criticism. Eventually, Patricia stopped leaving her house altogether, consumed by guilt and shame. Though some might argue that she deserved every bit of backlash, Angela often found herself reflecting on whether punishment alone could truly lead to meaningful change. Wasn't education and understanding equally, if not more, important? As weeks passed, the town began to transform in subtle but significant ways. Schools introduced new programs designed to teach students about empathy, diversity, and inclusion. Role-playing exercises helped children understand what it feels like to walk in someone else's shoes, while history lessons highlighted the struggles and triumphs of marginalized communities. Local businesses partnered with nonprofit organizations to host workshops on unconscious bias, encouraging employees and customers alike to challenge their assumptions. Even the police department implemented reforms, including mandatory training sessions on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation techniques. Angela played a pivotal role in these changes, using her platform to advocate for accountability and progress. During one particularly moving speech at a town hall meeting, she addressed the crowd with raw honesty. "This isn't about pointing fingers or assigning blame," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "It's about recognizing that we all have work to do, me included. None of us is perfect, but together we can create a community where everyone feels valued and respected." Her words resonated deeply, prompting many to take a hard look at their own beliefs and behaviors. For Marcus, being part of the youth advocacy group gave him a renewed sense of purpose. He attended rallies, spoke at events, and even helped design educational materials for schools. Though he still struggled with moments of doubt and frustration, he found solace in knowing that his voice mattered. One evening, as he sat with his mother discussing their next steps, Angela looked at him with pride. "You've grown so much through all of this," she said softly. "And I know it hasn't been easy. But you're showing people that strength doesn't mean never feeling afraid. It means finding courage even when you are." Despite the progress, challenges remained. Not everyone in the community embraced the changes wholeheartedly. A small, but vocal minority argued that too much emphasis was being placed on race, insisting that incidents like the one involving Marcus were isolated anomalies rather than symptoms of a larger problem. These voices occasionally disrupted town meetings or posted inflammatory comments online, testing the patience of those working toward unity. But Angela reminded everyone that resistance was inevitable and that overcoming it required persistence and compassion. By the end of the year, the town had made remarkable strides. New friendships formed across racial and cultural lines, breaking down barriers that had existed for generations. Art projects celebrating diversity adorned public spaces, serving as constant reminders of the importance of inclusivity. And while no one could claim that racism had been eradicated entirely, there was a growing commitment to addressing it head-on whenever it surfaced. For Marcus and Angela, this collective effort brought a sense of closure, not because the issue was solved, but because they knew they were part of something bigger than themselves. Looking back, Marcus realized that the incident had changed him in ways he never expected. It taught him resilience, empathy, and the power of standing up for what is right, even when it's scary. Angela, too, reflected on how far they'd come as a family and as a community. Though the scars of that autumn afternoon would always remain, they served as a reminder of the strength found in unity and the potential for growth in the face of adversity. Together, they proved that even in moments of darkness, light can shine through if people are willing to stand together and demand better. As the weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of the incident continued to shape the lives of everyone involved. For Marcus Johnson, the boy at the center of it all, life began to settle into a new rhythm. However, this rhythm was far from ordinary. It carried the weight of newfound responsibility and purpose. Marcus had always been a bright and curious child, but now he found himself stepping into a role he never imagined, that of an advocate. The youth advocacy group he joined became his second home, a place where he felt understood and empowered. Each meeting brought fresh ideas, passionate discussions, and plans for action. Marcus thrived in this environment, finding strength in the shared mission to create a more inclusive world. One evening, as Marcus sat with his mother Angela over dinner, they talked about the upcoming town hall meeting. Angela had been invited to deliver a keynote speech, and she wanted Marcus to join her on stage. At first, Marcus hesitated. Public speaking wasn't something he enjoyed. The thought of standing in front of hundreds of people made his palms sweat, but Angela encouraged him gently, reminding him that his voice mattered. "You don't have to say much," she told him. "Just share your truth. That's powerful enough." With a deep breath, Marcus agreed, knowing that stepping out of his comfort zone might inspire others to do the same. The day of the town hall arrived, and the community center buzzed with energy. People from all walks of life filled the room, young and old, black and white, neighbors who rarely crossed paths before now sitting side by side. When Angela took the stage, the crowd erupted into applause. She began her speech by thanking everyone for coming, acknowledging the hard work already done, and emphasizing the importance of continuing the fight against racism. Then, she turned to Marcus, inviting him to speak. As he stood up and walked to the microphone, the room fell silent. His hands trembled slightly, but when he started talking, his voice grew steady. "I didn't ask for any of this," Marcus began, looking out at the sea of faces. "I was just a kid riding my bike home from school. I didn't think anyone would see me as a threat because of the color of my skin. But what happened to me happens to so many other kids every day, and we can't let it keep happening." The audience listened intently, hanging on to his every word. By the time he finished, tears glistened in the eyes of many, including Angela's. It was a moment of raw honesty and courage, one that left an indelible mark on everyone present. Meanwhile, Patricia's life remained in shambles. After losing her job and becoming a pariah in the community, she struggled to find meaning in her days. Her once busy schedule had been replaced by long hours of solitude, during which she wrestled with guilt and regret. Occasionally, she ventured online under anonymous accounts to read articles or watch videos about the incident, hoping to understand why people were so angry with her. Yet, instead of clarity, she often found herself feeling more confused and defensive. How could one phone call cause such chaos? Wasn't she simply exercising her right to feel safe? Patricia's attempts to rationalize her actions only deepened her isolation. Friends who had initially defended her stopped responding to her messages, and even family members distanced themselves. One day, while scrolling through social media, she stumbled upon a video of Marcus speaking at the town hall. Hearing his words struck a chord within her. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider the impact of her actions, not just on Marcus, but on countless others like him. Though she still couldn't bring herself to apologize publicly, she began reading books and watching documentaries about racial inequality, slowly opening her mind to perspectives she had ignored for years. Back in the community, the momentum for change showed no signs of slowing down. Schools implemented new curriculums focused on teaching students about systemic racism and cultural diversity. Teachers received training on how to address bias in the classroom, ensuring that every child felt seen and valued. Local businesses launched initiatives to support minority-owned enterprises, pledging to hire more diverse staff and create inclusive environments. Even law enforcement underwent significant reforms, adopting policies aimed at reducing racial profiling and fostering trust between officers and residents. Angela played a central role in these efforts, working tirelessly behind the scenes to ensure that progress was sustainable. She collaborated with experts, attended countless meetings, and advocated for funding to support grassroots organizations. Despite the demands of her position, she made time to check in with Marcus regularly, ensuring that he wasn't overwhelmed by his growing responsibilities. Their bond strengthened through the experience as they navigated both the highs and lows together. For Marcus, being part of the movement brought moments of joy alongside challenges. He loved seeing the positive changes taking root in his community. But there were times when the weight of expectations felt heavy. Some adults treated him differently now, either placing him on a pedestal or expecting him to have all the answers. Friends occasionally teased him about his sudden fame, though their jokes lacked malice. Through it all, Marcus leaned on his family, teachers, and fellow advocates for support, learning to navigate his evolving identity with grace. One particularly memorable event occurred during a school assembly. Marcus was invited to speak to his classmates about his experiences and the importance of standing up against injustice. As he stood in front of the auditorium, he noticed familiar faces, students who had once bullied him or dismissed him now, listening intently. When he finished speaking, a wave of applause swept through the room, followed by a standing ovation. Later, several students approached him to express their admiration and gratitude. It was a turning point for Marcus, marking the moment when he truly embraced his role as a leader. Despite the progress, challenges persisted. A small faction of residents resisted the changes, arguing that too much attention was being paid to race. They accused Angela and others of dividing the community rather than uniting it. Tensions occasionally flared at town meetings, with heated debates breaking out over proposed policies. Yet Angela remained steadfast, reminding everyone that discomfort was a necessary part of growth. "Change isn't easy," she said during one contentious discussion. "But if we're serious about building a better future, we have to be willing to confront our fears and biases." By the end of the year, the town had transformed in profound ways. Conversations about race and equity had become normalized, replacing the silence and avoidance that once dominated. Art installations celebrating diversity adorned public spaces, serving as reminders of the community's commitment to inclusion. Neighbors who had once lived parallel lives now shared meals and stories, forging connections that transcended differences. While no one claimed victory over racism entirely, there was a collective determination to keep pushing forward. For Marcus and Angela, the journey was far from over. They knew that true equality required ongoing effort and vigilance. Yet they also recognized the power of resilience and unity. What started as a painful incident had blossomed into a catalyst for change, proving that even in moments of darkness, light could shine through. Together, they stood as symbols of hope, not just for their town, but for anyone fighting for justice and fairness. And as Marcus pedaled his bike through the park one crisp morning, he smiled, knowing that his story had helped pave the way for a brighter tomorrow. By the time spring arrived, the town had undergone a transformation that few could have predicted just months earlier. The incident involving Marcus and Patricia had sparked a chain reaction of reflection, action, and growth. What began as an isolated act of prejudice had become a turning point for the entire community, forcing people to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their neighbors. For Angela Thompson and her son Marcus, this period was both challenging and rewarding, a delicate balance between personal healing and collective progress. Angela continued to lead with unwavering determination, but the toll of constant advocacy was beginning to show. Late nights spent drafting policy proposals, attending meetings, and responding to media inquiries left her exhausted. Yet, she refused to slow down. Her vision extended far beyond addressing racial profiling. She wanted to create systemic change that would benefit generations to come. One of her proudest achievements was the establishment of a community advisory board tasked with monitoring police practices and ensuring accountability. This initiative not only strengthened trust between law enforcement and residents, but also provided a platform for marginalized voices to be heard. Marcus, too, found himself growing in unexpected ways. The shy boy who once preferred blending into the background now stood confidently at rallies, speaking passionately about justice and equality. His involvement with the youth advocacy group had opened doors he never imagined possible. He traveled to nearby cities to share his story at conferences, met influential activists, and even collaborated on a short documentary highlighting the impact of racial profiling on young people. Despite the pressure, Marcus handled it all with remarkable maturity, often reminding himself that his voice mattered because it represented so many others who remained unheard. One sunny Saturday morning, the town hosted its first-ever Unity Festival, a celebration of diversity and inclusion organized by local leaders, including Angela. The park where Marcus had been targeted months earlier was transformed into a vibrant hub of activity. Booths lined the pathways, offering everything from cultural performances to workshops on anti-racism. Children ran around laughing, their faces painted in bright colors, while adults engaged in meaningful conversations over cups of coffee. At the center of it all stood a large mural created by students from different schools. Titled, "Together We Rise," it depicted hands of various skin tones holding up a globe, symbolizing unity and hope. As Marcus walked through the festival with his friends, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The same place that had once been the site of fear and misunderstanding was now a beacon of positivity and connection. When Angela joined him later, they paused in front of the mural, taking in its beauty. "This is what we've been working toward," Angela said softly, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Not just fixing what's broken, but building something better." For Patricia, life remained a struggle. Though she had begun educating herself about racism and privilege, the road to redemption felt impossibly long. She attended therapy, sessions to process her guilt and shame, often breaking down in tears as she confronted the harm her actions had caused. In private moments, she wrote letters of apology to Marcus and his family, though she lacked the courage to send them. Instead, she channeled her emotions into volunteering at a local shelter, hoping to make amends in small, quiet ways. While some dismissed her efforts as insincere, others believed that everyone deserved a chance to grow, even those who made grave mistakes. The festival marked a milestone for the town, but it also served as a reminder that the work was far from finished. During a panel discussion titled "Moving Forward Together," Angela addressed lingering challenges head-on. "Celebrating our progress doesn't mean ignoring the problems that still exist," she told the audience. "We must remain vigilant, continue having difficult conversations, and hold each other accountable." Her words resonated deeply, prompting many to reflect on their own roles in fostering inclusivity. Among those listening intently was Patricia, who had mustered the courage to attend the event. Sitting alone at the back of the crowd, she watched as Angela and Marcus spoke eloquently about resilience and unity. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a future where forgiveness might be possible, not just from others, but from herself. As the session ended, she lingered near the exit, debating whether to approach Angela. In the end, she decided against it, knowing she wasn't ready. But the seed of hope planted that day stayed with her, nudging her to keep moving forward. Back at home, Marcus reflected on how much he had grown since that fateful autumn afternoon. The boy who used to dread attention now embraced opportunities to inspire others. He realized that his journey wasn't just about overcoming adversity. It was about using his experiences to create a ripple effect of positive change. One evening, as he sat with his mother discussing their next steps, Angela smiled warmly. "You've taught me so much, sweetheart," she said, "about bravery, perseverance, and the power of standing up for what's right." Despite the strides made, resistance persisted. A vocal minority continued to oppose the changes, claiming that too much emphasis was being placed on race. They argued that initiatives like mandatory diversity training or revised policing policies were unnecessary and divisive. Tensions occasionally flared during town meetings, with heated debates breaking out over funding allocations or program priorities. Yet Angela remained steadfast, urging everyone to focus on the bigger picture. "Disagreements are natural," she reminded the crowd during one particularly contentious gathering, "but let's not lose sight of why we're here, to build a community where everyone feels safe and valued." As the months passed, Marcus and Angela found strength in their shared mission. They celebrated victories, no matter how small, and supported each other through setbacks. Their bond deepened, rooted in mutual respect and admiration. Friends and neighbors often remarked on how inspiring it was to see a mother and son working side by side to drive meaningful change. Even critics couldn't deny the impact they had made, not just locally but nationally as well. By the end of the year, the town had become a model for other communities grappling with similar issues. Journalists visited to document the transformation, educators studied the programs implemented in schools, and activists praised the collaborative spirit that defined the movement. For Marcus, the most fulfilling aspect was seeing tangible results. Kids playing together without prejudice, businesses hiring more inclusively, and neighbors treating one another with kindness and respect. Looking back, Marcus understood that the incident had changed him forever. It had stripped away his innocence but replaced it with wisdom, empathy, and purpose. Angela, too, recognized the profound impact the experience had on her leadership style and perspective. Together, they proved that even in moments of darkness, light could shine through, if people were willing to stand together and demand better. As winter approached and snow blanketed the streets, Marcus pedaled his bike through the park once again. This time, however, he felt nothing but peace. The scars of the past remained, but they no longer weighed him down. Instead, they served as reminders of how far he and his community had come. With a smile, he thought about the future, confident that the lessons learned would guide them toward even greater heights. For Marcus and Angela, the journey was ongoing, but they faced it with hope, knowing that every step brought them closer to a world where no child would ever have to endure what Marcus did that autumn afternoon. As the year drew to a close, the town stood as a testament to resilience and transformation. What had begun as a painful incident involving Marcus Johnson and Patricia's misguided actions had evolved into something far greater, a movement that touched every corner of the community. For Angela Thompson and her son Marcus, this journey was not just about addressing injustice. It was about building bridges, fostering understanding, and creating a legacy of hope for future generations. The Unity Festival had marked a turning point, but its impact continued to ripple through the months that followed. Inspired by the event's success, local leaders decided to make it an annual tradition. Plans were already underway for next year's celebration, with committees formed to ensure it grew even more inclusive and impactful. Schools incorporated lessons from the festival into their curriculums, teaching students about the importance of diversity and collaboration. Businesses pledged ongoing support, hosting workshops and fundraisers to sustain initiatives aimed at promoting equality. The sense of unity that had blossomed in the park now permeated everyday life, shaping how people interacted with one another. For Marcus, the changes brought both challenges and triumphs. He had become a role model for many young people in the community, especially those who felt marginalized or overlooked. His story resonated deeply because it showed that even ordinary individuals could spark extraordinary change. Yet fame came with its own set of difficulties. Some days Marcus longed for the simplicity of being just another kid, playing basketball without drawing attention, or riding his bike without feeling like he represented an entire cause. But he also recognized the privilege of having a platform, and used it wisely, speaking out whenever he saw injustice brewing. One particularly memorable moment occurred during a school assembly when a younger student approached him after his speech. "Do you think I can make a difference too?" the boy asked shyly, clutching a notebook filled with scribbled ideas. Marcus knelt down to meet him at eye level and smiled warmly. "Of course," he replied. "Anyone can make a difference if they care enough to try." That interaction stayed with Marcus long after the assembly ended, reminding him why his efforts mattered, not just for himself, but for others who looked up to him. Angela, meanwhile, faced her own struggles as she balanced her role as mayor with her responsibilities as a mother and advocate. The demands of her position often left little time for rest, yet she found strength in knowing that her work was making a tangible impact. One of her proudest accomplishments was the implementation of a mentorship program connecting students from diverse backgrounds. Through this initiative, young people learned from one another's experiences, breaking down stereotypes and forging friendships that transcended racial and cultural divides. Watching Marcus guide younger participants reminded Angela of how much her son had grown over the past year. Patricia's journey toward redemption remained fraught with obstacles. Though she had taken steps to educate herself and contribute positively to the community, acceptance was slow in coming. Many residents still viewed her with suspicion, unwilling to forgive her past actions. Yet, she persisted, volunteering tirelessly at shelters and food banks, hoping to prove through consistent effort that she was committed to change. In quiet moments, she wrote letters to Marcus and Angela, pouring her heart onto paper, even though she lacked the courage to send them. These unsent messages became a form of therapy, helping her process her emotions and reaffirm her resolve to do better. By spring, signs of progress were evident everywhere. Neighbors who had once avoided each other now exchanged greetings warmly. Children played together in parks without regard for differences in skin color or background. Teachers reported fewer incidents of bullying, attributing the shift to increased awareness and empathy among students. Even law enforcement officers noted improved relationships with residents, thanks to transparency measures and community engagement programs. While no one claimed victory over racism entirely, there was a collective determination to keep pushing forward. One evening, as Angela and Marcus sat together on their porch watching the sunset, they reflected on how far they'd come. "Do you ever wonder what might have happened if none of this had occurred?" Marcus asked thoughtfully. Angela paused, considering his question before responding. "I think about that sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember all the good that's come from it. The conversations, the connections, the changes we've made. It's taught us that even in our darkest moments, we have the power to create light." Their bond had deepened through the experience, strengthened by shared challenges and triumphs. Friends and neighbors often remarked on how inspiring it was to see a mother and son working side by side to drive meaningful change. Critics who once dismissed their efforts couldn't deny the impact. They had transformed not only their town but also inspired others across the country to take action. As summer approached, the town prepared for another milestone, the unveiling of a permanent memorial dedicated to justice and equality. Designed by local artists, the sculpture depicted intertwined hands lifting a globe, symbolizing unity and shared responsibility. Inscribed on its base were words chosen by Marcus. "Together, we rise above fear and build a world where everyone belongs." On the day of the unveiling, hundreds gathered to witness the ceremony, including Angela, Marcus, and even Patricia, who stood quietly at the back of the crowd. When Marcus stepped up to speak, the audience listened intently, hanging on to his every word. "This isn't just a monument," he said, gesturing toward the sculpture. "It's a reminder of where we've been and where we're going. It's proof that when we stand together, we can overcome anything." His voice trembled slightly, but his message rang clear and true. As applause erupted around him, Marcus felt a profound sense of fulfillment, not because he sought recognition, but because he knew his story had helped pave the way for a brighter tomorrow. Looking ahead, Marcus and Angela understood that the fight for equality was far from over. Challenges would continue to arise, requiring vigilance and perseverance. Yet they faced the future with hope, confident that the foundation they had built would endure. For Marcus, the scars of the past no longer weighed him down. Instead, they served as reminders of his strength and resilience. And for Angela, the experience reinforced her belief in the power of community and collective action. As autumn returned, painting the town in shades of gold and crimson, Marcus pedaled his bike through the park one crisp morning. The same place that had once been the site of fear and misunderstanding now felt like home, a sanctuary of peace and connection. With a smile, he thought about the journey ahead, knowing that every step brought them closer to a world where no child would ever have to endure what he did. Together, Marcus and Angela had proven that even in moments of darkness, light could shine through if people were willing to stand together and demand better.